Number 9, the unexceptional behavior of the corrupt species which God above had observed all over, he transmitted to Noah to arrive at a clear conclusion, as illustrated by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So here we see something that we perhaps didn't present before, that Noah had to screen and make sure that the animals that came were in fact the ones that he had selected. That Noah might have seen the wrong lion trying to get on, and would have had to have refused that one based on his own moral barometer test that he could have. And the test again is based on Siva and Elohim, so it's not based on health or based on another characteristic, but rather on what would God want in the future of the species. Vayiskor, and he locked, number 10, with a mercha. This is going forward, and it's going to lead into the word that's going to come after it. After Noah had entered the ark at the end, God secured his safety, including that of the box, and he locked it from various influences, as conveyed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Vayiskor is going to look forward into the next word, and that's Hashem, God. This is Midat HaRachamim. This is the merciful concept, and the locking is going to be done how with the idea of mercy. So the question is, how do we know that Noah had entered, other than the fact that from context, I guess we have to derive it. That if it's locked, Noah has to be on the inside. But we'll continue. We have extra notes on the word Vayiskor, and he locked. A, from the outside, that no water should leak in any part of the ark. And B, by cutting off the rebellion of the disappointed bystanders to respond by causing malicious damage to the walls of the ark after the protecting beast had embarked, but the outside conditions rapidly intensified as portrayed by the next sentence and took over guard. So this closing or locking is keeping outside influences from coming into the ark, and from the inside, the antagonism between species was locked, so that a stronger animal was prevented from attacking a weaker one. Certainly, you put carnivores and herbivores on the same place, and that's a recipe for having an ark full of carnivores at the end and not much else. B, the sex desire and reproduction was locked and came to a standstill, so that there would not be any additional demands for supplies and care. And again, this is a very long period of time. This is the better part of a year, not only 40 days and 40 nights of flood, but 150 days afterwards for the water to settle, and then for the water to continue to recede. So this is a very long time, and certainly otherwise we would have had an ark full of only rabbits. All odors of various animals were locked and vanished in order to keep the air clean for breathing. Again, interesting things that you don't think of until you have to think of how would such a closed environment really work. Cows are great producers of methane. You want to have a light at night and a cow in the place. It's not a good combination. The strength of attacking animals was locked and rendered powerless, becoming unable to attack Noah or his family. Although we'll perhaps talk later about a midrash that in fact Noah is once attacked by the lion. E, the unusual desire of certain animals for their specific food became locked and were adapted to the available provisions of the ark. So, despite the fact that food was prepared, there certainly wouldn't have been a huge variety, and the animals seemed to be satisfied and to maintain their vitality throughout the length of time. And F, routine exercises of species which were part of their vitality were also locked and no longer required, even without any disciplinary action or argument. And certainly animals that are wanderers and so on didn't have that ability on the ark, and yet they seemed, again, to maintain the status quo. And all of those are folded into this word vayiskor, and it is closed off by the concept of Hashem, number 11, God. However, within the situation of judgment and punishment, God simultaneously applied His mercy to all creations, as demonstrated by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. When someone dies, we say the bracha Baruch Dayan Emet, that God has a plan and a thought out measure for measure application of divine justice, and has a considerate end for all beings. And we have a large number of beings who are meeting their end here, and that has to be a merciful way in order for them to complete their task, both the people and the animals of the generation. And also, it's mercy for the animals that are obviously saved and maintained within the ark. So we have to consider that, the fact that we're using Hashem, not Elohim, that there is mercy being applied to both ends of the equation. And again, we don't understand the divine to the point that we can say, the time of your death was exactly the right time to complete what you needed to complete, and in the right way to complete what you needed to complete. But that is the Torah concept. And God willing, we should be granted some understanding that perhaps we can come to that conclusion when we face things that are difficult in our lives. Ba'ado, number 12, for his sake, with the stabilizing sof pasuk, in order to make it easy for Noach to keep order and supervise the box efficiently, an atmosphere of true coexistence and cooperation was established among all inmates of the ark. This was set up for his sake. Animosity and dissatisfaction were alien to the inhabitants of the ark. So this is something that God does in His mercy to make it easy on Noah to be able to manage the interior of the ark and all of its inhabitants throughout the time that they're there. And we have an alternate answer to what Ba'ado is. Because Noach, as the commander of the ark, entered last, the door, Petach HaTeva, was locked for his sake from the outside. Well, if Noach would have had to been on the outside to lock the door, then Noach couldn't have gotten in. So it is closed Ba'ado, it's closed for him, i.e. as a mercy to him, because otherwise he would have gone down without the ship. And we'll read the pasuk out loud. Ve'haba'im zachar u'nekeva mikol basar ba'u kasher tziva oto Elokim vayiskor ad Hashem ba'ado. We just finished another aliyah, by the way. And we're going to continue on, I think, one more sentence. We're Breshit Zion, Pasuk Yud Zion, Pasuk 17. Vayehi, and it was, with a dargah, A darga is an emphasizing note that leads forward into the thing that comes after it. After the ark was locked, the flow of pilgrims in its direction kept increasing, and they were frustrated in panic not to be admitted to the box. And it was a danger for the ark to be damaged by the angry applicants, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark. So we have sort of this gathering of things in proximity, and how do we solve that gathering of things that are dangerous to the ark? Hamabul, with the tevir. This is again that protective, stabilizing note. And how would we think of the flood as something that's protective and stabilizing? Because of Vayehi, we've got all of this cacophony happening outside, which is threatening the ark. And yet, number two, at the time that the pre-existing rain suddenly increased to a standard of the flood, and the assembled became confused, disorganized, and lost sight of their objective, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So here, when we have a threat, the flood, in fact, becomes a stabilizing influence. It removes the threat. It makes the ark safe, and that's why the mabul is something that's sheltering. It's sheltering the ark and its inhabitants. And that's not something that we normally would have thought of as the flood being something that's protective. And yet here, it's serving the purpose of those who are aboard the ark. Arba'im, with the mercha, this is something that's going to gently fold in the concept of what's come before and lead more intensely into what's going to come after it. 40, following that sudden increase of the flood's intensity. And so, by the way, the focus in the last, in number 2, was the fact that we say mabul, not geshem or mayim. It's not rain, it's not water, it's mabul. It's flood damaging, aggressive type of water, not just any type of water. Following that sudden increase of the flood's intensity, it continued for 40 full days without any intermission, as stressed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So the 40 is going to lead into Yom. It's going to lead into the fact that it's the whole days, and it's gently folding in the idea of mabul that was before it. So the mabul that's going to continue, and Yom, day, number 4, with a tipcha, closing off the previous thought. On each day, there was a significant rise of water level, as shown by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. Each day is building on the one before, and completing it, and adding more. So the tipcha is telling us that this 40 is incremental. You've got incremental accumulation of water, incremental damage, and each one is building on the previous day. Al haaretz, over the earth, with the stabilizing etnachta under the aleph there. I'm sorry, we have an extra comment on Yom. Before, in Breshit 12:4-7, it was said that the rain lasted 40 days and 40 nights because it was comparably mild, and a day was clearly distinguished from a night. During the flood, the dark day could only be distinguished from the night by a brightening of the sky window, tzohar, in the ark. Otherwise, there was almost no difference between the day and the night. So, we're distinguishing between geshem and the word mabul. And the fact that the intensity here is saying that day is a concept that is being counted in the most esoteric of ways because of the conditions that the flood had set. Al haaretz, number 5, with the stabilizing etnachta, over the earth. However, over the earth there was a lasting darkness, because the light from above was totally obstructed by the waters, as shown by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So the conditions al ha'aretz, the conditions on what was previously land, are different from what you've got in the ark. In the ark, you have this differentiation between these exceedingly cloudy, gloomy, rainy days versus the conditions that are existent on the land at this time, because we're going to see that we're going to get water coming from above and below, and on the land you won't even be able to tell daytime from nighttime because of the intensity of the conditions, because of the intensity of the rain. Vayirbu with the munach. Munach is that strong angular shape that separates itself out from the way that things were before and then moves forward into what's going to go and be the new reality after that. Due to the heaviest precipitation, more areas became submerged and covered by the water, and they increased in size, as suggested by the shape of the reading mark and by the juxtaposition to ha'aretz, and followed by hamayim. So what we're doing is the increase is separating yourself out from the land, i.e. we've got that line that the Munach has. So we're saying that land is disappearing. The land is going away, and the only thing that's going to continue forward is hamayim, the water. Number 7, the waters, hamayim with the rivi'i. Rivi'i is a note that stands on itself and emphasizes it, is a note that makes the word stand on itself and emphasize itself. As we had said before, it might have a couple of officers that lead up and announce its arrival, but then it still stands alone. Hamayim, the waters. Number 7, the waters kept occupying progressively vast regions, and several smaller basins became confluent to represent one larger body of water, as expressed by the broad meaning of the shape of the reading mark. The Rivi'i is telling us that this water is standing alone to the point that it became a single entity in and of itself, i.e. everything was covered with water. So when it stands alone, there's no more land. And again, from the Vayirbu, you see that the land, the Aretz before, is being separated out, and the only thing that's remaining afterwards is hamayim, the water in and of itself, becoming a unified, standalone entity. And they carried the Vayisu, Pashta. Pashta slightly emphasizes the word and tells you to look forward from it to what it's going to connect to. Without any substantial delay, the waters surrounded the ark, and they carried it upwards, as indicated by the reading mark. Pashta is a note that's on top of a word, and it's looking forward, so the ark is being carried above the water and moving forward on top of the water. Very, not onomatopoetic, but very graphically representative of what's going to happen. And we see other places in Torah where we have graphic representations in some of the markings that are in Torah. At Shirat Hayam, the very last line in it tells us about Uvnei Yisrael halchu beyavasha b'toch hayam. The people of Israel walked on the dry land in the middle of the sea. The last sentence ends with the word hayam, and that sentence ends with the word hayam. And when you look at the poetic way that Shirat Hayam is written, you'll see that there are partial columns, and then a block in the middle, and then another partial column, or the other way. So you'll have the words poetically being arranged block of words, little block of words, or block of words, block of words. Shirat Hayam, Uvnei Israel halchu b'yabasha, and the people of Israel walked in the dry land, has the word Hayam from the previous sentence right before it, and Hayam from that sentence written after it. The people of Israel are walking in the middle, graphically, in between the water on both sides that are creating walls around them. So we will have ways that the text will graphically be presented in this fashion that it mirrors the situation that's happening. We have another one of those Hanistarot L'Hashem Elokeinu v'Haniglot Lanu U'Vanenu Ad Olam, when the people of Israel finish their trek in the desert and they learn a new commandment. They're all going to be responsible for each other's behavior and to improve each other. This was something that they're only going to get on the other side of the Jordan once they've entered into the land of Israel. And we see that the words Lanu U'Levanenu have a series of dots on top of them. And one of the interpretations of that is when you're on the other side of the river, that's when this becomes applicable. So we have this, again, graphic representation that will appear in text sometimes. And here we have an example of that concept being conveyed by Yisu with the pashta, with this standalone note sitting on top of a word, representing the ark floating on top of the floodwaters at this point. Et hateva, with the box, with the katon. This again is a two-part note, so we're looking for something that is going to give us sort of a doubleness about it. With the box, all of its inhabitants became waterborne, and it discontinued temporarily their relation with the earth, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. First stage of the flood. The idea is that you have the tigers that are surviving on the ark now having a different destiny from the tigers who are drowned on the land below, and that's why we have this two-part shape to the mark. And we're going to see that the flood is going to give us different things that are going to happen in it now, and that's why we've specifically said that this is the first stage of the flood. Vataram, and it raised. This is a tipcha, so this is something that is looking back and folding the concept of what's come before it and completing it. The ark kept floating above the water level, and it raised continually to comparably higher positions as they referred backwards as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. The carrying of the ark is allowing it to be raised by the ever increasing volume of water. Me'al, with a mercha, this is going to gently fold what's come before and move into what is going to go after, with the focus being on what's coming after it. Me'al, from over, number 11. When lowland had vanished, the ark floated like a sea, making the only representation of life from over cultivated regions as specified by the shape of the reading mark. And this is what he's defining as the second stage of the flood. That we've got Vataram, the Vayisua Tateva, and they carried the ark, Vataram, and it's being raised, is separating out, is completing that first stage where the land is now no longer connected. Everything that was on the land before is no longer connected to the future that's going to be what the world is going to have. Me'al, from over, is now looking forward And that's why we're saying this is the second stage of the flood, that the land had disappeared and the ark is now floating completely, and this is where we're going to continue from here on. Haaretz, the land. After all the land had completely disappeared, the surroundings became strange for all survivors. They lost all orientation and with regard to their whereabouts. So etnafta is normally a stabilizing concept, but the land which had disappeared is being replaced by a new normal. The concept of sea in text, when we see the word yam, ocean, being used, it has its paradigm in a sentence in Mishlei which says Kiderech Onia Alev Yam, the path that a ship will take in the middle of the sea. The concept of sea, and in fact of desert as well, is something without landmarks. If you're there and you don't have the proper navigational tools, you have no way to know which way to go. It is a place that does not give you any hints as to which way truly your path is going to be. And the animals and Noah and the surviving people are now in this place where they don't know what the future is going to be, which negates the stability of the land that was there before. So you'll notice here that he doesn't make reference to the note, and I'm wondering if we're presenting a concept here that every verb root in Hebrew can mean either the thing or its opposite, davar v'hipucho. So, for instance, the word shoresh means the root of a tree, but we have the concept. The word also presented lisharesh, to uproot, to take the roots out. So quite often you'll have verbs that mean their concept and their opposite. So I'm wondering if when we're presenting haaretz, the land, with this stabilizing at the sof pasuk, I'm wondering if this is hipucho. This is exactly the opposite. This is the land no longer having any stability, and the only thing that's left is Hayam, is the ocean, is the flood, who has absolutely no stabilizing factor about it. So we didn't mention the note here, but I'm wondering if we're talking about it as being the exact opposite, the complete lack of stability, which is in fact the goal here. The lack of stability is what we wanted. We wanted chaos. We wanted a correction of what God had made more organized. We wanted the stability of having it become disorganized again. So it's sort of an interesting way that the destruction is in fact constructive. And we'll read the pasuk. Vayehi hamabul 40 yom al haaretz vayirbu hamayim vayisu et hateva vataram me'al haaretz. And I think we'll stop there for a minute while I try and look up that reference in Vayikra.